This episode of the Theology of Business podcast is sponsored by our friends at GWT2 Energy. Do you want to increase the profit margins of your restaurant or retail operation? One way to do that is to lower your energy costs. With over 20 years experience helping restaurants and retailers reduce their energy bills, GWT2 Energy helps owners and operators create a customized energy savings plan that will achieve up to 25% energy savings. To start saving and become more profitable, visit gwt2energy.com. That's the number 2, gwt2energy.com. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Theology of Business podcast. I'm your host, Darren Shearer, and this is a show that helps marketplace Christians to partner with God in business to help you make disciples of your company, your industry, and your community. On this episode, we're joined by Steve Robinson. Steve was the Chief Marketing Officer of Chick-fil-A from 1981 to 2015. I mean, just think about that for a minute. Think about how Chick-fil-A has grown during that time. And Chick-fil-A makes more money per restaurant than McDonald's, Starbucks, and Subway combined. When you think about the initiatives and the innovations and the brand messaging that came through during that time, like eat more chicken, that statement, Steve, is so pervasive. You may be aware of this. I've got a kindergarten son. Whenever kindergartners and young kids sing happy birthday to each other now, at the very end of happy birthday to you, you know what they yell out?
Eat more chicken.
Like it was like it's so pervasive that I was at a kindergartner's birthday party with my son the other day, and the mom she wanted just to keep it real simple and didn't want people like yelling things out during her, sweet daughter's birthday party. And she said, all right, kids, we're not going to yell out, eat more chicken at the end of happy birthday. Okay. I don't want, so it's that pervasive. The Chick-fil-A cows, setting up freestanding stores outside of shopping malls, even breakfast, you talk about this in your book, just kind of how that innovation came about, the decision to put fresh cut flowers on the table, all the new sauces, that we take for granted now, they weren't always there. I think throughout my lifetime, the barbecue sauce has been there, but all these other.
Your favorite?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, it is. The Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, fastest drive-thrus on the planet. And in his book, Covert Cows, How Faith, Cows, and Chicken Built an Iconic Brand, Steve details how he and the Chick-fil-A leadership team, intentionally curated by Truett Cathy, kept their Christian faith at the core of the business, staying true to Proverbs 22, verse 1, which says, "A good name is to be chosen rather than great riches, loving favor rather than silver and gold." Steve, thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Darren. Treat to be here.
What was your experience like coming on board Chick-fil-A? Because there was no marketing department when you came on the scene, right?
No, there wasn't. I was. That's a pretty important story. I was director of marketing for Six Flags over Georgia in the summer of 1980. My phone rings, and it's Jimmy Collins, who's the chief operating officer for Truett. And he called me to say, "Listen, we don't have a marketing department. We've got a search going on. Your name keeps coming up." I knew they didn't have a marketing department because about a year and a half earlier, I pitched them on building a Chick-fil-A restaurant in the theme park to build their brand, create trial, and they wanted to make money at it, which the deal wasn't designed that way. Anyway, they chose not to do it. So when he said, "We don't have a marketing department," first thing that went through my mind was, I already knew that, or you would have done that deal with me. But that he asked me would I like to interview, and I had a great job, director of marketing, Six Flags, pretty cool job in the city of Atlanta.
Sure.
And but I thought, here's a private company. Six Flags is now owned by a public company, local, strong values. I think I can spare 3 or 4 days and interview. So let me jump ahead to December. I'm still interviewing. And this is a story that really illustrates the foundation of what made Chick-fil-A special. I'm interviewing with Truett Cathy. It's the first week of December. And I've been with him about an hour. We're eating lunch in their offices, which at the time was just a converted Butler building in South Atlanta. I said, True, what are you looking for in the ideal marketing candidate? And he said, I have absolutely no idea. All I know is whatever it is, I don't want to do it. and I was a little caught off guard. And then he said, but I do know this, that if we invite you to come here, it's because we can trust you. We've decided we can trust you. We have fun together. He said, because it's our intent, if you come here, you'll never go anywhere else. Now, I've already had 4 jobs in a period of 8 years. 3 of them with Six Flags, but nonetheless, I've been moving around. And I found that answer surprising and fascinating. And then he said, the most important decision we make here is who we invite into the organization. And then another pause, and he said, we don't train culture, we hire it. Now, this is a man that never went beyond high school with his education, but he was incredibly wise and astute. And he realized, I realized right then that if he made the number one priority of the business, who he selected into the business, and it certainly lined up with the kind of people I had already met through the interviewing process. Now, the reason that story's important on 2 points. Number one, he built the business on the foundation of his values, his faith, but the most important decisions he practiced was who he invited into the business. Number two, if he did trust you, he left you alone. And I worked with him for 34 years, and not one time did he ever call me to his office to say, hey, I think you made a mistake, you screwed up, why'd you do that? And as you know in my book, I unpack some mistakes. But he never did anything to undermine my confidence and his trust in me.
Wow.
And as a result, we had the freedom to think outside the box, to be innovative. And we had the long-term, you're not going anywhere. We had the long-term horizon of being able to think about what's in the best interest of the customer. What's going to really build the reputation of Chick-fil-A as a brand? How can we make this business unique and special for people? And so my career journey was one that was marked by empowerment because of this, because this guy lived out the very thing he told me in the last interview.
Yeah.
I don't know what it is that needs to be done. I'm going to count on you to do that. But if I trust you, then I'm going to empower you and we'll have fun together. And we did have incredible fun. It was an amazing environment. Yeah. I knew I had to retire sometime, but it was hard to leave because we were still having a lot of fun when I walked out the door.
Yeah. Well, a company who can bring, cows, people dressed up as cows into the building, that's a company that likes to have fun.
Well, let me tell you a couple of funny stories about that. I never actually showed him the creative that we chose to run. We hired the Richards Group in Dallas in 1995, and they came up with the cow concept, cow billboard, in 1996. And we actually put it up before I didn't feel compelled that I had to show it to him. We loved it. My team and I loved it. We put it up on one billboard in Atlanta just before the 96 Olympics. And it's been up about a week, and my phone rings, and it's Truett. Now, he never calls me, but he calls me. He says, Steve, can you come to my office? And I'm thinking, oh, man, what's on his mind? And it even crossed my mind, maybe he doesn't like that billboard. And I go up there, and he's got another gentleman sitting there with him, across from his desk. I'll fictitious name. He said, Steve, this is John Smith. John is with the Georgia Cattlemen's Association, and he didn't like that billboard you guys have put up.
That's right.
He said, "What are you going to do about it, Steve? He's putting it in my lap. What do you think we ought to do about that?" So I looked at John Smith and I said, "John, I know Truett raises Angus cattle on his farm for a hobby, but he makes his living selling chicken, and the initial result seems to be this billboard is helping us sell chicken. So I don't think it's going to go anywhere unless Truett tells me to take it down." And Truett had a big smile on his face by this time when he looked at John Smith and he said, I agree with Steve. I think we'll keep using that billboard. So it was one of those many experiences I had where we knew early that the Eat More Chicken idea had a hook to it, a memory to it. It was totally outside the box of conventional fast food advertising. And the rest is history. You know, when I left, we had worked with the Cow campaign and the Richards Group for 22 years. So it was an amazing experience, but it's another example of how Truett was empowering. He didn't judge it. He didn't prejudge it. He let us run with it, turned into a big part of the brand.
Yeah. That's just one of the great stories from Steve's book, Covert Cows. And, you know, when you came into the company within the first couple of years, it was the economy was kind of in the tank and Chick-fil-A was struggling. It was the first year that sales declined, correct?
That's correct. Yes. Good for you. You read the book.
Yes, sir. And there was a retreat. There was a meeting called where the actual Chick-fil-A mission statement emerged during that time. But tell us that story.
Well, it was 1982. And for those that don't know their history, interest rates went up into 18, 19, even 20%. So what happens is what you would expect. Development stops. So, well, at that time, Chick-fil-A had all their stores in malls. And in 80 and 81, they'd opened together 100 stores, a lot of growth. But suddenly in 82, when that price of money went up like that, developers stopped. I mean, even malls coming out of the ground stopped. Retail sales slowed down. Truett actually signed a note to build the first office building, so his personal property was on the line. And our sales went down, and in fact, it went down a lot. So cash flow was suddenly a big concern. And yes, he came to our young executive committee. By that time, I think there were 8 of us. And he said, hey, we got a problem. I want to know what you're going to do about it. And our initial reaction was, we didn't create the problem, but we'll certainly dig in. And he asked us to get off site. So we went off site for 2.5 days. He was with us. We did the things that you probably think we would do in the first day. We cut the budget. We put a freeze in hiring. We stopped all new store construction, other than ones where we had definite leases already signed and we had to fulfill. So we went from over 50 new stores in 81 to, I think, 18 in 82. And we kind of sat around the room after about 2/3 of the day and realized, well, other than that, we really liked the plans. In fact, the plans for the next year included the introduction of Chick-fil-A nuggets. So there was the seed of a potential growth right there. And I think it was Dan Cathy, who looked at the group and said, well, we've done that, but we may have a bigger issue, and that is we have all these relatively new Chick-fil-A operators and staff members who joined the family, and they may not be real clear about how we look at the business, and more importantly, how Truett looks at the business. Why are we in business? I mean, what's the most important thing to us? Is it just sales growth? Is it just profitability? How do we help people understand who they've hitched their wagon to here? And so we spent the next day and a half talking about why does Chick-fil-A exist? And I'll just give you a high flyby summary. We heard most of that conversation started by listening to Truett. Truett, what's important to you? And Truett informed us in no uncertain terms that as far as he was concerned, Chick-fil-A was a gift. The business was a gift. The sandwich was a gift. He didn't like the crisis, but he made it clear, listen, I've been through other crises before. I've had 2 major medical issues. I've had a store burned down, had another store that didn't work. I lost a brother in an airplane crash. So this is not my first rodeo when it comes to a crisis. I look at this business as a gift from God, and our responsibility is to steward it well If he chooses to prosper it, great. If not, that's okay. That led to us a day and a half putting down words and phrases on poster boards and eventually writing Chick-fil-A corporate purpose. First time it had ever been put in writing, to glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that's entrusted to us, and to have a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. 3 big ideas. Glorify God by being great stewards of people, resources, and then having a positive influence on all who come in contact with the business. Mm. And in other words, let's run a business that glorifies God, but let's do it by being really good, excellent leaders and managers of what's put in our hands.
Yeah.
And if we do that well, then hopefully we have a chance to have a positive influence on people we serve. And the influence really comes through the local leadership of the operators who run those Chick-fil-A, those businesses, those independent operators.
Yeah.
They're not managers, they're independent contractors. And so Truett, all of us felt a great deal of freedom to say, hey, the greatest opportunity for stewardship, the greatest opportunity for positive influence in our communities is how do we equip these operators to not just sell a lot of chicken sandwiches, but attract and develop great people and serve their communities. So, that meeting to solve a cash flow problem resulted in the corporate purpose. It sits on a bronze plaque out in front of the original office building that did get built. Not one word has changed. And I can assure you it is still the center point and probably the number one litmus test of how decisions are made at Chick-fil-A. I know we went back to it constantly. We're about to do this or think about this or make this kind of investment. Is this going to live up to the standard of the corporate purpose? And you have now the second generation of Kathy families leading that business. They're still fully committed to what's written on that bronze plaque.
Yeah, beautiful. And the structure of that corporate purpose is a lot like the great commandment Jesus gave. Love God, love people.
Yeah.
Glorify God, and then to have a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. I mean, that's really the love people aspect. And
well, I would tell you, Darren, that experience caused me personally to step back and spend time with Diane. And are we clear about our purpose? Mm. And we crafted our own personal and family purpose. It's very similar to the Chick-fil-A purpose. Glorify God, being great stewards, have a positive influence. But obviously in our case, it became a filter on how we made decisions and how we try to lead and develop our children. And so that whole experience was a life lesson, not just for a business, but for those of us that were part of it.
Yeah. Well, and that's the outworking of the corporate purpose. It's having a positive influence on you.
Yes. It's starting with that group in that room. No question about it. Yep.
Exactly. So powerful.
Now, interesting, the next year, you didn't ask, but the next year, the economy wasn't any better. But you could sense when we announced and unpacked that purpose, kind of a cloud lifting from the business. And in 1983, we had a 36% sales increase. Same-store sales went up 29%. We were able to obviously get through the cash flow crisis, or Chick-fil-A wouldn't be here today. So I think people focusing on the long term and understanding why the business existed created a relaxed environment, and people, just like Diane and I, people found alignment with it, and we just went to work, and as it turned out, God blessed.
Yeah. There was this, and I don't know if this is like an apocryphal story from Chick-fil-A, but there's a story about, when Chick-fil-A was kind of struggling, and Boston market, there was some competition there, and there was an aggressive approach to wanting to open up new stores very quickly. And then, as the story goes, Truett Cathy slams his fist down on the table and says, "Gentlemen, we don't need to get bigger. We need to get better. And when we get better, our customers will demand that we get bigger." Is that the way the story went? Or
well, it's partly true, but not totally. Truett, we in the 90s we were growing rapidly, and we were borrowing money for the site, the dirt, and to build the building shell. We were using cash flow then to finish out the restaurants. In other words, we were kind of replicating the mall concept. Chick-fil-A would own, find a site, build the restaurant, finish it out with cash flow, and right down to the first inventory. Well, the result of that is we get into the mid-90s, and we've got a lot of debt on the books. And Truett turns 80, and he comes to the executive committee. He doesn't slam his hand. I never saw Truett slam. I never saw him slam his hand on a desk or a table, ever.
Yeah.
He simply came into the meeting room. He said, "Guys," he seldom came into the meeting. Jimmy Collins, in fact, asked him that day, "Truett, what do you got on your mind? Because obviously you're here." And he said, "Well, I don't feel like a guy who just turned 80 ought to have $250 million of debt on the books." Now, in the scale of the business, in the grand scheme of the business versus cash flow, it was not a lot of debt. But he grew up in the Great Depression, and he hadn't forgotten 1982.
Mm-hmm.
And he just basically said, "Slow down. I want to get out of debt." And so that led to a decision, all right, how do we get cash flow dependent, debt free? And we had to adjust growth plans. And I would tell you, Darren, what the side benefit beyond getting debt free, which took about 7 years, it didn't happen overnight. We set a course, and we got there. But the other great thing that came out of that, being dependent upon cash flow, was it forces you to live within your means.
Mm-hmm.
You don't get out ahead of your skis and grow too fast. And there are a lot of brands out there, and maybe even the one you mentioned got out ahead of their skis and grew too fast. And it forced us to really, with every investment, say, okay, is this the best use of a dollar versus using that dollar over here? And what if we're going to hire talent, what's the priority of the talent we hire? And we're not going to be able to hire everybody we want, and we got to prioritize it. We got to draw a line and say we're not going to build beyond this point. We're not going to hire talent beyond this level. And we developed a discipline of, as I said, living within our means. And I think it was one of the, besides getting the financial health of getting debt free, I think it created a tremendous process of due diligence and zero-based budgeting in the business. And we learned how to be even better stewards because of Truett simply saying, "I want to get out of debt."
Yeah.
There's probably a lot of application to us personally, people listening. If the best way to be a great steward is to have the freedom to exercise judgment over every dollar and not have a debt holder who's already got an allocation of it that you can't touch.
Right. Yeah.
And Truett understood that.
Yes.
He wanted freedom to allocate resources the way he wanted to do that. And that included tithing and building his foundation and giving back to the communities in which Chick-fil-A served. I mean, one example, last year, Chick-fil-A gave $15 million in scholarships to store employees. Well, he started that program in the mid-'70s when the scholarship was $1,000 for a team member, and it's still going strong.
Yeah.
But it's a lot easier to do when you're not on the hook for a lot of other obligations.
Right. And in the Chick-fil-A stores, there's this, and just throughout the culture, there's this second mile principle at work,
Mm-hmm.
that Jesus
Mm-hmm.
talked about, uh, going the extra mile with
Correct.
people that ask you to do things.
Right.
Uh,
Matthew 5:41.
yeah, even when it feels unjust that you have to
Yes.
go to that
Yes.
to that length, and I've seen stories of Chick-fil-A workers changing people's tires, and just
Yeah.
I mean, when you talk about going the extra mile, so how did that kind of make its way? And obviously this has been there really from the beginning, because that's true, it's heart.
It was.
But in terms of like the biblical framework for that, and how that really became so prominent in culture, how did that happen?
Well, probably in the early 2000s. I can't give you the exact year. Truett visited a Ritz-Carlton. He was on a trip. And he got impressed by how he was, anytime he said thank you to a team member in the hotel, they'd always say, "My pleasure." And he noticed that when that happens, you can't help but have eye contact with the person, and there's this kind of natural reaction to smile, and you have a personal connection. Truett liked it. And he came to one of the Chick-fil-A seminars, which was the national meeting, and asked all the operators, if you would, ask your team members, when somebody says thank you, tell them, "My pleasure." Well, I'll shorten the story. He makes that request 3 years in a row at the national meeting. And there's not a lot of traction. He's out visiting stores, and he's not seeing a lot of it or hearing a lot of it. And finally, after the third year, Dan, Kathy, and myself, a small group of people, we pulled together and we said, "Hey, Truett's serious about this. There's wisdom in this. He has a natural heart of hospitality. How do we institutionalize hospitality? Consistency, just like two pickles on a sandwich." And Dan was the one that said, "Why don't we draw on the principle of Matthew 5:41, where Christ said, hey, if it was in the context of the Roman Empire, if a Roman soldier asked you to carry his pack a mile, which was the law, I say you carry it too. Do the unexpected. Earn a platform to share who you are and who you serve." That's basically what Christ tells them. So how do we create a hospitality model around that principle of going the extra mile? And again, I'll shorten the story. We spent 7 years working on it. We benchmarked great hospitality service businesses. We studied their hospitality habits. We figured out how they trained. We looked at how they measured, and we set out to do the same thing. We got some tremendous consultants to help us, and we formulated hospitality behaviors that customers value based upon customer feedback. We built training programs around them. We put in measurement around them, just like we expect two pickles. How do we measure hospitality performance so it's consistent? If it's not consistent, it won't be a brand signature. And by year 7, we had proven to operators through test stores that they not only could do it, but it would actually help their sales. And it wasn't just a warm fuzzy that wouldn't have an impact on the business. It would actually help the business.
Yeah.
And so by the late 2000s, second mile service became a norm for the brand. And Chick-fil-A operators perform across the board beyond our expectations. And you think about trying to train and equip 50,000 employees. That's what it was when we started. It's over 150,000 team members now. And for you to have a consistent my pleasure second mile experience, quite frankly, is probably harder than making sure there's two pickles on every sandwich.
Yeah.
As Dan says, we're trying to train some young people in habits many of them have never been trained in. Respect they've never been trained in. Quite frankly, respect maybe they've never been shown. And how do we train them to show it?
Yeah.
And it's a challenge.
Right.
But having the operator model where you have a business leader who is attracting the kind of talent to the business they need, which now includes attracting hospitality talent, they pulled it off. I don't think the average fast food manager could ever do it, but Chick-fil-A operators could do it, and they did it. And it's clearly now part of the brand. It's part of the brand experience. And I would say it's probably more impactful than even the cow campaign, because you're impacting every guest interaction in the restaurant, in the drive-through, even in the community when Chick-fil-A does events and delivers food, etc.
Yeah. And going back to the corporate purpose, that part about having a positive influence on all, on a personal level, when somebody says thank you to me, guess what I say?
My pleasure. Yeah. It's contagious. It's contagious.
And yeah, I've had a lot of Chick-fil-A chicken sandwiches, but because of that consistency, I think I can remember only one time in, probably, I don't know, well over 10, 15, 20 years of going to Chick-fil-A restaurants, that somebody, when I said thank you, that they didn't say my pleasure. Maybe they were probably brand new or something like that, but it sounded so like off character, off because it is so consistent.
Yeah.
And that is incredible.
Well, it's certainly not one of the reasons it was so powerful. Is certainly not the norm in the fast food category. And I'm not slamming other brands. It's just not part of those experiences. They tend to be very transactional oriented. Get your food, get you out. Chick-fil-A has always been a brand, and this simply made us better at building relationships.
Right.
Not transactions, relationships. And over time, what's happened is we don't have a marketing department. We have a marketing army of Chick-fil-A fans, customers.
Yeah.
And second mile service has been a big part of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's even just the idea of the Chick-fil-A restaurant. I mean, when I think of other fast food places, I think of the name of you're going to McDonald's. You're not going to a McDonald's restaurant.
Right.
When people think about Chick-fil-A, they think about they're going into a restaurant, and that's right. That's the verbiage. I remember Dan Cathy talking about this a while ago, but the actual meaning of the word restaurant.
Yes.
What is that?
Place of restoration.
A place of restoration.
Yes.
Wow.
And Churro talked about it. So Chick-fil-A's always been built on a premise of being a restaurant, a place of restoration. Every store has its own kitchen. If you walk back into these kitchens, it's like a V8 and a Maserati. I mean, these kitchens are designed to produce fresh food.
Yeah.
They're not bringing food pre-made in any way into those restaurants. I mean, the closest thing is the waffle fries are pre-blanched, but everything in those stores is fresh made. So they have a heritage of being a restaurant because you're making fresh food.
Yeah.
And that came out of Truett's experience when he ran the Dwarf House, which was a diner, and that's all he knew was making fresh food. But then you add on to that, create an experience in the restaurant where you actually can sit down and somebody will bring you your food, refresh your drink, clean the table, carry your order to the table if it's large. That's a restaurant experience. It's not it's Chick-fil-A's really, unless you choose to be self-served by going to the counter, it's really not a fast food restaurant. They serve you in the drive-thru. They'll serve you in the dining room. They'll bring food to your office. They'll deliver food now to your home. It is a restaurant. And if you're gonna be a restaurant, why not create an environment where people feel refreshed, restored?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a restaurant. It's not a political action committee.
No.
It's a place where people come to get restored and
That's right.
feel special and respected. And so with that second mile principle, can you tell us some of the things that were happening when protesters were coming and the way that the
Sure.
protesters were
Sure.
treated? And for those that we have a lot of listeners from around the world that might not be as familiar with the the backstory, but Chick-fil-A kind of came under fire for something.
Yeah. Well, we came on fire because Dan Cathy was transparent and said he believed in traditional marriage.
Right.
And it got picked up and it got spread through the social media. And although we had always, and still to this day, I know this is still the case, did not want the restaurant to be a political, social platform, that happened. And so the response was, we're not going to get into a social media debate. We're not going to stray from the premise of being a place of restoration and rest. We're not going to get involved in politics or social debate. So we just turned to the operators and said, listen, do what you do best. So when there were protesters, not many, but there were some stores that had protesters on their own. We didn't coach them. Operators would go out, offer them free lemonade, offer them a sandwich. Some of them even offered to take them in the back of the restaurants and give them a kitchen tour. Many of the eventual customers chose to do that. And what happened was people found out, protesters found out, this is really not the organization I'm reading about on the web. Mm-hmm. These people showed dignity and honor to me. And so the protesters the next day, many times, weren't there anymore because what they experienced didn't line up with what they'd been hearing and reading. And that's how we dealt with it. We left it in the hands of the people who served day to day, the operators and their team members, and they dealt with it graciously. They showed people honor, dignity, and respect, and it calmed down. Yeah. Now, did the brand take a little bit of a hit? It did, but predominantly with people who had never experienced Chick-fil-A.
Right. And people were being taken on tours of the kitchen and, just really rolling out the red carpet with that.
Roll out the red carpet. That's exactly right.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
I love that. So Chick-fil-A has clearly transitioned from a regional brand to a national brand. And you talked about the moment where, you were on the field at the Chick-fil-A Peach Bowl, and this thing has gone to a whole new level.
Yeah.
What is it going to take for Chick-fil-A to really become an international brand?
Well, I think, first of all, at a macro level, they have to stay true to their purpose. They don't need, and I don't have any question that will happen. Family owned, second generation's leading now, a lot of third generation leaders already involved in the business. They love the business. They're committed to the purpose. And as long as they stay focused on the purpose and telling the stories that embody the purpose, including how and why it was written, that to me is the starting point. Then when you think about international, the first opportunity is to maximize their opportunity right here in the United States. I think today they have a little over 2,400 locations. They could easily have 8, 9, 10,000 locations in the United States, probably over a period of a decade. I think they're going to have the resources to grow at that kind of clip. It's up to them. International, I think the biggest challenge they'll face, and they know it, is one, can we live out the purpose? And can we recreate the Chick-fil-A operator model? If they cannot recreate the operator model, they'll probably have a very difficult time recreating the experience, the guest experience, at the level that they are able to create it in the United States. They are already opening stores in Canada. They're doing them. They're not using a partner. They're going to Canada. They're making the investments. They're finding independent operators up there. They're setting up all the infrastructure to serve Canada. And they're performing incredibly well because it's not just their investment, it's their model, operator model, and therefore it's their experience. If they can figure out a way to create that in other nations, terrific. They may very well be able to go beyond the United States and Canada. To me, those will be the hurdles, and I don't think I know others in the business feel the same way. And it's an incredible stewardship issue right in the middle of the purpose statement. How do you steward this business that God has clearly favored well? And how do you do it well, first of all, in the country that has already blessed you and given you the foundation that you have? And then secondly, then how do you do it well somewhere else? It's an incredible opportunity. Yeah. I cheer for them. I pray for them. There are days when I wish I was still there to be involved in it. But there's a lot of really smart people there that also love Christ who I think will do a great job.
Yeah. Well, I hope this, those Chick-fil-A's will start to go all over the world. I'm praying for that to happen. I know when I was in the military and stationed in Kuwait, sure would have been nice to have a Chick-fil-A nearby, there, because evidently in the Middle East and really all over the world, fried chicken is, we as humans, we love some fried chicken.
you get beyond the corporate purpose and the operator model, and you start diving into the infrastructure and supply chain issues about going to places like that.
Sure.
And the cultural context of wherever you're going to go.
Yeah.
It's a real challenge.
Yeah.
So they're gonna need a lot of discernment and wisdom.
Yes. Amen. Yeah. We're praying that God will continue to pour it out. So Covert Cows is the book. The subtitle is How Faith, Cows, and Chicken Built an Iconic Brand. I know people can get that on Amazon. And I actually listened to the audio book probably, 6 months ago before I got connected with Steve, and I've just been looking forward to this and have enjoyed this conversation. Steve, is there anywhere else you'd like people to go and find out more about what you're doing?
Well, I think Barnes & Noble also carries the book. For their information, it was published by a division of HarperCollins, Nelson Publishing. And they're doing a great job with it. And I have a website, or I'm on LinkedIn if somebody wants to reach out to me. I sure do.
And what is the website for our listeners?
srobinson.consulting.com. srobinson.consulting.com.
Okay. Well, Steve, we appreciate your time, and there's so much here that I know that our listeners are going to want to go back and listen to this probably while they're heading over to Chick-fil-A for dinner or whatever.
I hope so. I have a pension. They can continue to support me.
I was getting hungry just preparing for this interview. Just thinking about Chick-fil-A biscuits and spicy chicken sandwiches and all that good stuff. But it's just love watching what God is doing through Chick-fil-A, and so thankful for the leaders like yourself who God has used to make it happen.
Thank you, Darren.
We're certainly living out that corporate purpose to glorify God by being a faithful steward of all that is entrusted to us, to have a positive influence on all who come in contact with Chick-fil-A. And I think everyone would agree that this is happening. So we sure appreciate it.
Thank you, Darren. I appreciate your reaching out. I've enjoyed our visit a lot.
We hope you've enjoyed this episode. You can share your feedback and get more information to help you partner with God in business and disciple your company, your industry, and your community at theologyofbusiness.com. The Theology of Business podcast is sponsored by Highbridge Books and Media, a media agency specializing in publishing and promoting the world-changing ideas of inspiring thought leaders through book publishing, website development, publicity, email marketing, social media management, podcast management, and video-based course publishing. Take the next step to share your message with the world by contacting us at highbridgemedia.com. Thanks for listening, and keep partnering with God in your business.